Hello and welcome to the Political Circus Weekly Podcast. I am your host, Mike Ursery, and you are listening to episode number 15. The Political Circus Weekly Podcast is a part of the Think Liberty Network. You can find the Think Liberty Network at most places where podcasts are hosted, to include iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Spotify, iTunes, and Google Play. We have a lot to unpack from the past week. First of all, the New England Patriots won the Super Bowl, to the delight of Patriot fans and to the complete and utter dismay of everyone else. But along with that, we have some news that came out of Virginia involving governors wearing blackface and lieutenant governors doing awful things and state attorneys general wearing blackface, as well as other politicians. Virginia is becoming the state of blackface, I guess. Another thing, President Trump delivered his State of the Union address this past week, and Democrats in Congress are showing us just how insane they really are. So late last week, it was looking like the only major news story would have been the Super Bowl, followed by Trump delivering his State of the Union address. But that seemed to change because this major news came out of Virginia last weekend. Their governor, Ralph Northam, was in some hot water. Their lieutenant governor, Justin Fairfax, was also in a pickle. And as if that wasn't enough, their attorney general, Mark Herring, is also in some trouble. And then we find out later on this past Thursday, that State Senator Tommy Norment, who is said to be one of Virginia's most powerful Republicans, has also appeared in this blackface controversy. And then, of course, the other big thing in the news cycle this week, of course, was the State of the Union address. If you watched the speech, did you notice all the white? Democratic congresswomen dressed in all white to pay tribute to suffragettes from the early 20th century. At last year's State of the Union address, they all wore black to symbolize the Me Too movement. This year, they found another way to virtue signal, and that's all this is. It's virtue signaling. Lois Frankel, who is a Democratic congresswoman from Florida, tweeted earlier this week that she and others would wear white to honor those who came before us and send a message of solidarity that we're not going back on our hard-earned rights. I'm sorry, is someone trying to take away women's rights? I haven't heard anything about that. But I do know what this is about, though. This is about the abortion issue, because the abortion issue has been pretty big in the news for the past couple of weeks. Virginia and New York have both passed major abortion legislation, and it's gotten some pushback from pro-life groups and from the GOP. And I'm not going to get into the issue of abortion here, but this is what that was all about. A bunch of pro-choice women all wore one color to virtue signal, and they called it standing in solidarity for women's rights. As for the speech itself, the president gave a good speech. I'd say it's the best speech he's given to this point in his term. A lot of news outlets were eager to fact check, of course, and they did. And they found that Trump exaggerated some of his numbers, like when he talked about the number of jobs he's created during his term, or anything else. Talked about the rate of economic growth, the number of jobs he's created, how wages are higher now than they were before. But is anyone surprised by this? Hasn't Trump always been an exaggerator? This is nothing new. But aside from the speech, did you notice the reception he got from Republicans and Democrats throughout the evening? The tension that has caused the major divide in our political system was on full display that night. Democrats stayed seated throughout the speech looking stone-faced. Republicans stood and applauded every time he described something positive. I'll talk about that a little later in the show, but first let's dive into what's been happening in Virginia. On the first day of February, on a Friday, an old photo of Ralph Northam made its way into the public eye. It was a picture from his medical school yearbook. I didn't know that medical schools had yearbooks. And it's a picture showing two men, one in blackface and the other dressed as a Klansman. And this was on his yearbook page. So once this photo became public, it spread pretty quickly. And by the afternoon, every major news pundit was commenting on it. That same day, Northam released a statement saying that he was in the photo, although he didn't say which man in the photo was him. Why wouldn't he say which one was him, though? If he's saying that, yes, I'm in this photo and he's apologizing for it, you might as well just say if you're the Klansman or if you're the guy in blackface. Are you going to say you don't remember? Because that wouldn't make any sense. How could you remember taking the photo but not remember how you were dressed? But all he said was that he was in the photo. But then, a few hours later, he comes back and says that he wasn't in the photo. So now we have a strange turn of events. He said he made a mistake in misidentifying himself. And he gave the reason for how he misidentified himself, saying that before he graduated from medical school in 1984, which is the year this yearbook is from, he participated in a Michael Jackson impersonation contest. So he did impersonate a black person, but it was not the person in blackface in this photo. So he dresses up to impersonate Michael Jackson and admits that, yes, he did put brown shoe polish on his skin. So he admitted to impersonating a black person before. However, oh no, but wait, he's not in the photo though. So this does not incriminate him at all because he's not in that photo. He's not one of those. He's not that person who's wearing blackface in this particular photo, but still, he admitted to impersonating a black person. Oh, and we also found out later that when he was impersonating Michael Jackson back in 1984, he tried to moonwalk like Michael Jackson. He was telling reporters about this at a press conference. Someone asked him to demonstrate, and his wife, who was seated next to him, would not let him. Yes, a sitting governor during a press conference was told by his wife that demonstrating the moonwalk would not be appropriate. It didn't take very long for politicians to begin calls for Northam's resignation. Democrats in the federal government, like Kamala Harris and Elizabeth Warren, called on Northam to resign. Think about the irony of Warren telling someone who impersonated another race to resign. Just think about that. We found out this past week that she claimed Native American status in her application to the Texas Bar Association. So, on more than one occasion, she had claimed Native American status. And here she is telling Northam to resign because he wore blackface in 1984. Wait, I'm sorry. He impersonated Michael Jackson. My bad. Okay, yeah. He didn't wear blackface. He impersonated a black person. I guess there's supposed to be a difference between these two. Now, the thought at the time was that if Northam resigned, then Lieutenant Governor Justin Fairfax would become governor. However, a few days after the news broke about Northam, word about a sexual assault allegation against Fairfax arose. A woman named Dr. Vanessa Tyson, who is an associate professor of political science at Scripps College in California, alleges that Fairfax assaulted her back in 2004. This allegedly happened at the Democratic National Convention in Boston. Fairfax has denied the claim. Dr. Tyson said in a statement that she felt compelled to go forward with her allegation when she saw that Fairfax could become the chief executive in the state of Virginia. She said she felt a jarring sense of both outrage and despair. Fairfax said the two did have an encounter at the convention in 2004, but that it was 100% consensual. So we know that something did happen back then, but it's a he said, she said kind of thing at this point. Fairfax also has received calls to step down. One call is from the National Organization for Women. Kamala Harris has said that she finds Dr. Tyson's claims to be credible and that they should be investigated. Now, this allegation is new to the public, but we find out later on that this isn't the first time Dr. Tyson has told anyone about this allegation. Back in 2017, in the run-up to the gubernatorial election in Virginia, she told a friend who works at the Washington Post about what had happened to her in 2004. And according to the USA Today, the Post, which spoke to people who knew Fairfax from college, law school, and through political circles, found no similar complaints of sexual misconduct against him. The newspaper had reported this week. Without that, or the ability to corroborate Tyson's account, in part because she had not told anyone what happened, the Post did not run a story. Oh, okay. So the Washington Post couldn't corroborate her story. Therefore, they didn't report on it. Makes sense. Hey, wait a minute. We went through something like this with Brett Kavanaugh before he was confirmed to the U.S. Supreme Court. Dr. Christine Blasey Ford, if you remember, came forward with an allegation from 1982, which couldn't be corroborated by anyone, yet it blew up into a circus. We were getting round-the-clock coverage about an incident that may or may not have happened. She even named witnesses who released statements saying they were unaware of what she had described. In addition, Michael Avenatti, the resistance king himself, got involved, releasing a statement from a witness who spoke of young girls being gang raped by Kavanaugh and his friends at house parties. Are you really going to tell me that they didn't use the same standard on both of these incidents? And thanks to all of that happening last year, we found out some pretty important information about Brett Kavanaugh along the way, such as back then he liked beer and he still likes beer. We needed to know that a sitting Supreme Court justice likes beer. This is something important that people have to know about. And it was discussed when he was given the opportunity to testify before the Senate Judiciary Committee about that incident. We also found out about boofing. We found out about a drinking game called Devil's Triangle. We found out that Kavanaugh keeps calendar diaries. What we didn't find out, though, is if anything actually happened in 1982 because Dr. Ford's story could not be corroborated. Now, as I said earlier, Fairfax has denied this allegation. He also suggested that Northam could be the one who leaked the allegation to derail his ascension to the governorship. Yes, the man who is being urged to resign is trying to deny this would-be successor the governorship, which is what Fairfax had claimed earlier this week. Now, if Northam and Fairfax both were to resign, the next in line is State Attorney General Mark Herring. However, Herring has his own problem. He also dressed as a black person back in the 1980s. Okay, if you're a Virginia politician and you have never worn blackface, please stand up. At this point, they should start investigating to find out who didn't wear blackface back then or at any time. If all three were to resign, then the Speaker of the House of Delegates, William James Howell, would become governor. Howell is a Republican. Quick, someone find out if Howell ever wore blackface. Virginia is a three-ring circus right now. President Trump delivered the State of the Union address to Congress on February 5th. You know, I would like to see the State of the Union go back to what Thomas Jefferson did when he was president. All he did was he delivered a letter to Congress. And he said that the image of the president formally speaking to Congress looked monarchical. And I agree with this. There's a lot of fanfare. Members of Congress and others in attendance will stand and applaud after almost everything the president says. And presidents use this address not only to deliver the State of the Union, but they use this as an opportunity to rally their supporters. It's more of an image thing than it is an address about the State of the Union. So while Trump spoke, he talked about his accomplishments to this point in his term. He had said an economic miracle is taking place in the United States, and the only things that can stop it are foolish wars, politics, or ridiculous partisan investigations. He was signaling the need to end these endless wars that the United States is involved in Afghanistan and Syria. He also signaled the Robert Mueller investigation as well as investigations that House Democrats plan to open. One claim the president made during his speech is that the U.S. economy is growing twice as fast today as it was when he took office, and that we have the hottest economy in the world, hottest economy under the sun. Well, he didn't actually say that. That's my own words, but that sounds funny. However, fact checkers were there to point out that the economies of Latvia and Poland, as well as China and India, are growing at a stronger rate than the U.S. New York Times said that even Greece, who has economic troubles, grew at a stronger rate than the U.S. Another claim Trump made was that his administration has cut more regulations in a short period of time than any other administration in its entire tenure. Fact checkers also stated that this is false, saying that the Carter and Reagan administrations cut more regulations during their respective times in office. Trump said the economy has created 5.3 million jobs. The Bureau of Labor Statistics shows that 4.9 million jobs have been created, not 5.3 million. What has been verified as true is Trump's claim that wages for blue-collar workers are higher, and that his administration has imposed $250 billion in tariffs on goods coming from China. Trump made a claim that the workforce is higher now than at any time in history. However, fact checkers pointed out that the reason for that is they said that workforce participation is higher than any time in history, but they said the country's population is also higher now than at any point in history. Now, the biggest issue for the Trump administration right now is immigration. He's still fighting for funding to build a steel slat barrier on the U.S.-Mexico border. He made a claim about the murder rate in El Paso, Texas, saying that the city had one of the highest murder rates in the country, but the murder rate has declined since the installment of a border barrier. Fact checkers found that to be false, saying that in 2008, the murder rate in El Paso was decreasing before the installment of that border barrier. They also noted that murder rates across the country are decreasing. Trump also said during his speech that San Diego used to have the most illegal border crossings in the country, but then a strong security wall was put in place, and thanks to that powerful barrier, illegal crossings have almost completely ended. Fact checkers said that between 1994 and up until that barrier was placed, border apprehensions had decreased by 91%. The Congressional Research Service pointed out that the fence alone did not have a discernible impact on the number of immigrants crossing the border illegally. Now, there is one thing that Trump said during his speech that I really liked. And he said, great nations do not fight endless wars. Previously, Trump had said he wants to pull troops out of Syria and Afghanistan, and I agree with that. Look, we've been in Afghanistan for almost 18 years. If we haven't solved the problem by now, I don't think we ever will. As for Syria, it's a civil war. Trump has claimed that ISIS has been defeated in Syria, and he appears to be right about that. ISIS has lost a lot of ground in Syria. We don't need to pick a side in a Syrian civil war between their people and the Assad regime trying to keep its power. That's none of our business. I completely agree with the president here. Thousands of lives have been lost, trillions have been spent, and we're still in Afghanistan. The Senate voted to keep our military in the Middle East. Funny, because they never voted to go to Syria or to Afghanistan, but they voted to keep us there. Interesting. It's nice to see where their loyalty lies, with the war machine that's profiting off these wars. That's really good to know. Trump also took a swipe at Democratic socialists in the government, like Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, saying America will never be a socialist nation. He said America was founded on liberty and independence, not government coercion, domination, and control. We are born free, and we will stay free, is what he said. And when he said that, the camera then panned on Bernie Sanders, who sat there with this stone-faced look. He had to be seething on the inside. He had that look on his face like he was not happy to hear those words. Speaking of Democratic socialists in the government, have you seen this Green New Deal that's being proposed? Oh my God, this thing looks like socialism on steroids. It's being framed as an answer to the growing threat of climate change to the planet. It's supposed to be a plan to move America off fossil fuels and towards clean, renewable sources of energy. But it does a lot more than that. A lot more. There's a plan to achieve the goal of moving towards clean, renewable sources of energy in 10 years. In addition, the plan is to upgrade all existing buildings to meet this goal. Yes, upgrade every single building. I suppose the government will pay to make this happen. I wonder how much that is going to cost. But another goal is overhauling transportation systems to reduce emissions, including expanding electric car manufacturing, building charging stations everywhere, and expanding high-speed rail to a scale where air travel stops becoming necessary. And is that all travel? Or is that like just travel within the United States? And what about people who travel to Hawaii? And how much will it cost to build a high-speed rail system to make travel within the United States possible? And where is that money going to come from? Oh, we'll just print it and pay for it? Oh, okay. Interesting. Yes, let's just print all the money we need. Let's not worry about inflation or anything. We'll just print what we need. Why haven't we done that before? Wait, we have done that. And we have inflation as a result. Oh, but if we... Never mind. Another goal of this Green New Deal is a guaranteed job with a family-sustaining wage, adequate family and medical leave, paid vacations, and retirement security for every American. Is the government going to guarantee a job for every American? Does this mean the government is going to pay every American a living wage? I don't know. Another goal is high-quality health care for all Americans. So we're back to Medicare for all. How does that make the planet safer? I thought we were worried about climate change. Now we're on to giving everyone a job and providing health care for every single person. Well, Reason Magazine said that this could cost roughly $7 trillion by 2030. And the United States doesn't bring that much in through tax revenue. Even if you tax the rich into oblivion, I don't think they could bring in that much money. Besides, New York has tried that tax the rich strategy, and wealthy people are leaving the state. Do they want wealthy people to leave the country altogether? Earlier this week, an FAQ about the Green New Deal was posted on the internet, but then it was taken down because it was said to be a bad copy. There was one thing on that bad copy that people saw, and it quickly went viral. One thing the FAQ has said was that the government would provide economic security for those unable and unwilling to work. You know what? I don't think that was a bad copy. As they say, I think they said exactly what they meant, but they didn't get the response they expected, so they took it down. Now, whenever Bernie Sanders ran for president in 2016, he ran on a democratic socialism platform. Not quite Green New Deal status, but it was a democratic socialism platform nonetheless. I still firmly believe that if Hillary didn't rig the primary against him, he would have won that nomination. He had a lot of support, especially among young people, and he sparked much more voter enthusiasm than Hillary. At the midterm election, several Democratic Socialists were voted into Congress. As these moderates in the Democratic Party begin to leave office, we'll likely see them replaced with more Democratic Socialists as the Democratic Party moves further to the left. And that is terrifying to think about. This Green New Deal, it wouldn't pass in Congress right now. I don't think it would even pass the Democratic-led House of Representatives. I think too many moderates would prevent this from passing. But if you get enough people in Congress who support this, it would definitely pass. And that is terrifying to think about. What happens in 2020 will be an indicator of where this country will be going forward. Now, as of right now, there are no real updates on the situation that's happening in Virginia. Northam is still the governor, and every person is still in their current position. Fairfax is still lieutenant governor. The attorney general is still there. Speaker of the House of Delegates is still the Speaker of the House of Delegates. There's been no movement, no resignations, no anything. If there is anything that happens between now and next weekend, I will surely be talking about it on this podcast. But thank you so much for listening. As I said, the Political Circus Weekly podcast is a part of the Think Liberty Network. You can find us at most places where podcasts are hosted. iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Google Play. You can also find us at our website, www.think-liberty.com. You can find us on Instagram, search Think Liberty, one word, on Twitter at Think_Liberty, and you can find us on Facebook. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you all again next week.